Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining this afternoon's webinar, Navigating Challenges for HR Professionals. My name is Monica Moretta. I'm a program manager with McMaster Continuing Education, and I'm very pleased to co-host today's session and to welcome Christine Costa, Human Resource Management Program Instructor and esteemed colleague. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge and recognize that McMaster Continuing Education is located on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee nations and within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Without further ado, I would like to introduce my colleague and our human resources instructor, Christine Costa. Christine?
Thank you so much, Monica. Welcome to everyone who has joined us today. A little bit about myself as I lead our conversation today on HR challenges. I have been a human resources professional for over 20 years now in a variety of roles and companies, in financial services and higher education, in technology. And I've just always been interested in the workplace, the dynamics at play in the workplace. We spend so much of our time at work. And later in my career, my interests have been really drawn to organizational development. So, how do we reach our full potential at work? What makes a great team? What engages us? And then, really, anything about leadership development really interests me. So, really, what makes a great supervisor, leader, manager? Throughout the years, as I've mentioned, I've had a variety of HR roles. I've worked in both the private and the public sector. And last year, I started my own company called Christine Connects, and that is a professional training and facilitation practice. And I also provide HR consulting because really nothing happens without some consulting and conversation, right? When clients ask me about training, about coming in to do work, there's usually a really rich conversation about what's happening there. A little bit more about me. I've pursued my MBA at McMaster many years ago, so I am proud alumnus. And in my time completing my MBA, I was fortunate to be part of the co-op program, and I started to realize I had this affinity to human resources. And for me, it was a way to apply learning and development in a professional context because I started my career as a high school teacher. I have been teaching with McMaster Continuing Education for over 4 years now. I also teach and facilitate with a few other colleges, and I partner with organizations as well to support leadership development training and employee engagement initiatives. More about me too, a little bit more about me as a person to kind of understand where my perspective is as I launch into remarks today. I'm a relationship focused person. I love to connect with people, even though we're connecting virtually. I mean, I see a few names that I recognize today, so it's great to see you. I love to connect people either with each other or just to ideas and knowledge. And this is why I'm excited to present today. And this type of a webinar enables us to do just that. I also pride myself in being a change maker. And what I mean by that is I like to take creative action, those creative ideas to solve big problems because we are facing so many huge, big, hairy problems, challenges in the workforce today. So I hope through the conversation that we have today, maybe some of my insights might spark you to have an interest in the HR field. Maybe it just resonates with you. It makes you feel connected with so many other people that are going through similar challenges. And it maybe, changes how you approach work in your organization. So let's jump in. And before I start, the current landscape for human resources challenges, we're all coming from different kinds of perspectives today. So, I spent a few moments just giving you perspective of, where I'm coming from. But whether you're already in a human resources role, maybe you're a manager, maybe you're aspiring to be in human resources, we all have different perspectives and our landscape is going to be pretty different. And it depends on the type of worker that you are or workers that you support. So it could be field workers, individuals that are working in a factory or manufacturing setting, or our popular office employees, right? And depending on what type of work arrangement that you do have. And then, of course, the industry that you're in has such implications on what you're faced with. So you'll notice that I added the word disruption to this slide. And that concept comes from technology, right? So it would be defined as a radical change in an existing industry or market due to a technological innovation, right? Like the internet, something that was created, and now it's provided new ways for us to connect, new ways to make money that never existed before. And we could go even back further, right? Disruptions from the invention of the wheel, of the light bulb, of the cell phone, right? But there's another definition to the disruption, which is the disturbance or problems which interrupts an event, an activity, or a process. Some of those topics are causing disruption in our workplaces. Just think about the pandemic, the changes in demographics, global events, climate change, right? All of these things at some level impact how we manage people, the mental health of our workforce, how we recruit people, maybe how we teach people. So we're constantly having to evolve because of these disruptors. So today I'm going to focus on 6 challenges. So I've either observed these in my experience, whether it's running focus groups I've done in the last year or so, various engagement surveys that I've been a part of that I've seen as themes. So through my consulting and facilitation work. And then I also love to read, and there's so many different reports and articles out there and podcasts. And hopefully for those of you that are in HR and even just as a manager, I mean, you never really have the crystal ball, right? But it's so important to have a pulse on what is happening to see if there is potentially implication to your own world. And so some of the themes that really stand out for me are these ones that I'm going to cover. And I feel like they are taking up, and I see them taking up a lot of space and energy for HR professionals, and they have for me as well. So maybe some of these won't be a surprise for you, and maybe they will. So let's see. So first one, of course, AI adoption, right? This is massive. AI is disrupting companies, it's disrupting industries, but it's changing fundamentally how work is performed. And so a few years ago, if we were having this webinar, we would be talking about maybe just technology adoption. Like I was at a doctor's office this morning, and the doctor was mentioning, how, yes, it's great that she can, click to provide me a prescription that goes directly to Shoppers Drug Mart for me to fulfill. But that's added work. Actually, it's changed work for her versus maybe what her assistant did, right? So that's technology tools that, change the way we work. But now think of AI adoption. So remembering that AI, it's not just a tool. And I was recently reminded of this. It's actually an agent, right? And AI is defined by that ability to learn by itself, change by itself, make decisions, and invent new ideas by itself. So you might already use AI to help you with scheduling, maybe meeting minutes. I just did that last week with a couple of colleagues, and that was fascinating on how the AI was able to summarize our conversation and distill the action items. Maybe you're using chatbots where employees can ask questions. Maybe you're using AI to screen resumes. It's huge, right? And it's constantly evolving, even on a daily basis. And maybe some of your employees, maybe yourselves, right, worry about roles being obsolete. Maybe it's just keeping up with the advice, the guidance, the policies that organizations need to help employees and how they're using AI. So as HR, this is a challenge and an opportunity, but how do you guide people through this, right? Listening to employees' concerns, potentially providing training, upskilling opportunities. One article that I did read quoted that 3 out of 4 knowledge workers are now using AI in their work, and many of them without any guidance or oversight. that has major consequences, right? It can lead to biased decision-making, security vulnerabilities, potential privacy or intellectual property violations. So being able to get ahead of this as much as possible, but to be proactive about it, I mean, it is a challenge and an opportunity as well. What's next? Demand for flexibility. So it's already been mentioned in the chat. So whether it's where you work, how you work, when you work, how you get the work done, and especially for office workers, this is huge. This has been a huge topic for the last few years, especially. And I specifically use the word demand because in many workplaces, this isn't just an ask anymore. And I could ask many of you maybe that recruit as well, how much this question and this topic gets airtime, right? So for employees, how do I fit those medical appointments in with an aging parent or a sick child? Why can't we try 4-day work weeks, right? Why can't I live somewhere else that's more affordable to me and still do my job in Ontario? There's no easy answer to this. I'm not giving the answers today, but this is the challenge. This is the work, right? It's not always possible maybe to visualize what that flexibility is. And I've just seen it be a huge strain for leaders, for HR managers, right? You're trying to balance client expectations and commitments, service level agreements, a perception of equality among team members. So this challenge is definitely pushing the limits on management capabilities, on leadership styles, and not to mention the existing HR policies and procedures that we have. Number 3, anxiety-driven workplaces. So anxiety refers to that anticipation that we have of a future concern, and it's associated with an emotional response that we have. But it can be characterized as being persistent or having that excess worry, right? But anxiety is normal. It's normal reaction to stress. And mild levels, add that caveat, mild levels of anxiety can be beneficial in some situations, right? That anxiety can alert us to danger. It can help us prepare, pay attention, maybe to an upcoming deadline. But as with everything, too much of a good thing, obviously, or not obviously, but it has negative consequences. This year, the World Health Organization reported that mental health issues have been found to affect about 15% of working age people worldwide. That's huge. Younger workers being particularly vulnerable, with up to 40% reporting frequent or constant stress and anxiety, and nearly half experiencing burnout at work. And if that's not enough, globally, an estimated 12 billion working days are lost every year to depression and anxiety at a cost of $1 trillion US per year in lost productivity. Let that sink in for a second. So think about our workplaces, especially since the pandemic. What are those things that worry you? Some of them already were mentioned in the chat. What raises anxiety? Discrimination, inequality, excessive workloads, constant themes, right? All of these pose a risk to our mental health. And every workplace has some type of working anxiety, right? Those budget constraints, resource constraints, who's going to do the work? How are we going to perform? But for many of these worries are now almost constant. And I'm noticing that industries that may have been protected in the past, even like the public sector, are not immune anymore, right? And then you layer on top of this anxiety of living costs, fears of job security, financial stress. All of this is a major challenge and concern, especially for HR professionals. Skills mismatch. So as with AI disruption, right, new technologies, the skills that are needed in the workplace are constantly changing or switching or evolving, right? So just even think about what you learned during the pandemic alone. And for any type of worker here, right, whether it was more comprehensive health and safety protocols, Maybe your work was being automated and adapting to that and learning new tools. Maybe it's just how you did your job. And so we're continuing to see this mismatch between current employee capabilities and those future requirements. But it's not 5 years out. It's soon. And it's impacting bottom line. So in the context of the workforce, I'm referring to skills as those abilities that we need, that we have, and that we develop over time. So it could be technical proficiencies, using all the Microsoft products, Excel, you name it. It could be knowledge of a particular topic or subject. Maybe it's data analysis, or maybe it's a particular ability to do something like problem solving. In the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs report from 2023, they stated that employers estimate that 44% of workers' skills will be disrupted in the next 5 years. So maybe that training that you had or that skill that you had, it's changing, it's being disrupted, it's evolving. And that's not quite half, but almost half. So the top ones being cited as cognitive skills, creative thinking, and no surprise, technology literacy. So yes, technology, we can see that, right? Maybe you're using Microsoft Teams now to collaborate, and maybe, it was a phone call and an in-person meeting before. But cognitively, that's interesting, right? So think more about like complex problem solving. I just think about, customer service roles, the complexity of the problems that are coming their way and how to think through and react to those. And the World Economic Forum also stated that 6 in 10 workers will require training before 2027, but only half are seen to have access to adequate training opportunities today. Something to reflect on for your own organizations. And so the highest priority of skills, maybe you're wondering, is analytical thinking, followed by creative thinking. And then, of course, using AI. So I've seen a lot of organizations focus on those hard skills and yes, those technical skills, but what about those cognitive skills? Does your organization provide access to training in that type of area? Something to consider. Number 5, new collar worker. So I found this really interesting. An article written by global leaders at Oliver Wyman, a global leader in management consulting. They've identified the emergence of a new type of worker. And there's been articles written about this in a number of other publications as well. So new collar. So I personally don't like using the color labels to describe workers because sometimes it has been used in a derogatory manner. But just to summarize the findings, I'll use the labels. New collar being referred to as blue-collar workers who used the pandemic to learn new skills so they could find better jobs. So blue-collar, if you're not as familiar, that would be defined as a worker that performs manual labor, skills trade, includes those factory workers and manufacturing workers that I mentioned earlier. And during the pandemic, many of those blue-collar workers either lost their jobs as the pandemic began, or if they did work, they had to do it in person and put themselves potentially and their loved ones at risk. And they watched their white-collar colleagues, those office workers, right, migrate to very safe remote setups with their jobs pay protected. So from that, a new labor movement emerged. And so individuals really wanting to reinvent themselves, learning new skills, and it's this cross between skills labor and high-tech sectors. So think of a job that requires some physical labor, but it also requires someone that can potentially install, repair equipment, like elevators, right? Think of the complexity of even just doing, car mechanics. And so these new collar jobs require advanced skills in some high-tech areas like AI, maybe cybersecurity is huge, but they don't necessarily require an advanced degree, even a bachelor's degree. So it provides, some great opportunities for skilled workers to upskill. But this also impacts job design and thinking differently about our workers and their demands for flexibility, like we just talked about, the tools that they're using. And so, as a challenge, as an opportunity, seeing the trend that this new type of worker is emerging, and coming from non-traditional educational paths as well. So it has implications, how we recruit, how we compensate, how we design jobs. All right, and then our sixth challenge, the unretired employees. So when I first started my career, I remember older colleagues with a countdown at their desk to retirement, right? Their finish line. But what does retirement mean to you now? I mean, I know for me, as I get closer and closer to that age or date, is it a date? Is it an event? You know, I kind of challenge myself on how I define it. But let's talk about demographics for a little bit too. Who do you think is the fastest growing segment of the workforce? Gen Z? No. So according to Mercer, it's the 75-year-plus workforce. In the last 100 years, the 65-plus age group has grown 5 times faster than the rest of the population. And, you know, so many of us heard, you know, retirement boom, what are we going to see? But this is actually the fastest growing workforce demographic that we have. So are you prepared for it, right? Potentially people will live longer, and it might mean an opportunity for social connection and meaning in people's lives, right? For many people, maybe not being able to afford to retire. But what about our HR policies, our office setups, and yeah, our physical office setups? Are they welcoming to this age group, right? So organizations being able to look at flexible work options, part-time work, office designs, to really tailor to workers who are choosing this path of unretirement. Think about employer branding, right? It tends to focus on younger talent, potentially neglecting the value that older workers can bring. And not to mention potential ageism that exists, right? We make certain assumptions about generations or age. And so being able to recognize this retiree age of employees, this increasing demographic, this is here to stay. Their presence will probably grow in the workforce. And being able to potentially include age as part of DEI strategies, tailoring benefits packages, anything to remove barriers and to welcome this generation in the workplace. So a variety of challenges. Again, maybe these resonate with you. Maybe you haven't even thought of these in a lot of detail, but I offer those to you. But I did allude to some opportunities as well, right? And so I specifically label this slide as embracing the disruption. Not the disruption, if you consider it as a noun, it feels like there's an end state to that disruption, but consider it as a verb, right? Meaning that we're continuously evolving. We've got to embrace now continuously finding new ways to solve problems. These challenges are becoming our realities. And hopefully for many HR departments, being able to be proactive about them versus being reactive before they really hit. So let's look at a few opportunities. And again, I've kind of alluded to them. Ooh, let's go back. An anti-fragile worker, what does that mean? Well, building on the anxiety that I just talked about as a challenge, right? Consider the opportunity to create an anti-fragile workplace. The Academy to Innovate HR introduces this concept of anti-fragility to help HR navigate challenges. And unlike resilience, anti-fragility doesn't just withstand the shock, it gets stronger. So think about a project manager, who's had a few big projects fail. They're now even better at preventing failure than someone maybe that's new. Right? So this concept is about, instead of reverting back to the original state and withstanding that shock, something that's anti-fragile actually gains strength from turmoil. So with that definition, there's an opportunity to create an anti-fragile workplace, right? Where organizations recognize that link between well-being and productivity, being able to help current future generations of employees thrive in this constantly changing world. This could mean having a growth mindset, right? Embracing failure for growth and innovation's sake. And it's also cultural. It includes those social, structural factors affecting people's mental health, right? Do you have resources to help employees succeed, to remove barriers? So lots of opportunities in this area for benefit offerings, training, development. And then you saw my second one as a preview there. Oh, maybe let's see the third. Belonging. So we know a sense of belonging at work drives organizational performance, job performance, reduces turnover. People are happier. And research also shows that when employees feel like they belong, they're 3.5 times more likely to contribute to their fullest potential. That was quoted in Harvard Business Review. So think about this as an opportunity in addressing social needs of your workforce. It's a fundamental need, the social need that we have, right? Do people feel heard? Do they have a strong connection to their team? And this isn't just about a one-time team building event. This can be really tough work. I've heard a lot lately from groups about needing support for civility and respect in the workplace, but those are foundational to feel like we do belong. And so these are also the practical aspects of any DEI strategy, right? Is my uniqueness being accepted and even treasured by my coworkers? Do I feel like I can bring my full self to work? Am I psychologically safe at work? So a lot of opportunity, again, in so many different HR areas to support belonging in the workplace. And then I mentioned skills and learning. So being able to more efficiently identify what are those core skill gaps. There we go. And what's the plan to fill them, right? How many organizations do you work for have a skills inventory? So having HR working with business leaders, defining, forecasting those skill requirements because they're changing at such a rapid rate. So, and not assuming that this falls always on the shoulders of the local manager as well. But defining those skills, it will help you hire the right people, right? Help you understand what your learning and development initiatives should be. And again, focusing on those human or those cognitive skills that I mentioned earlier, like creative thinking, critical thinking. These need to be part of anyone's learning and development plans and strategies. Another opportunity, a topic if you're interested in to look at a talent marketplace. I've seen this in many articles and many companies now adopting, building on that conversation about skills. How do employers take advantage of the skills within their talent pool? And with so many platforms now, it makes it that much easier to have employees to connect potentially to projects, positions, development opportunities that connect with skills that they have or that they want to develop. So this is really a game changer for career development and being able to meet the labor demands that you do have. So this can be very events-based. So, think of a platform that matches employees' skills to maybe an open position, just a short-term project. Maybe it's a mentoring program. How many times maybe have you hired a contract worker, but that talent or that skill actually is in your organization and might be underutilized. So I've had this conversation with colleagues and businesses for a while now, even decades, but the technology is making it more of a reality. And even now, AI is advancing that game to match employees' skills with appropriate opportunities within an organization. And then, of course, too, was mentioned in the chat, but re-looking at our compensation plans. This has been continuous, and I'm seeing it even more so, and that creative thinking really plays in here too. But being able to provide meaningful rewards and recognition to employees, right? Fixing potential fundamentals of how we measure jobs, defining what fair wages are, overtime pay, and ultimately improving those benefits and flexible working conditions to help with retention. Having more personalized compensation packages is a trend for many organizations, having flexible benefits tailored to those employee needs. For many of you, that's probably not new. But, thinking of more creative options. It could be remote work stipends, could be personalized health benefits, other perks that really cater to your diverse employee needs. And it's not just monetary compensation, but that broader view of employee well-being and needs that could be health and wellness programs, retirement plans, caregiver benefits, educational opportunities, any other perks that really support and contribute to an employee's overall quality of life. So definitely mental health support. Mental health support, does it include grief counseling to help employees with how they're coping with local, global events, right? So many of those, a lot of, again, creativity being applied here. And then lastly, I would add, to keep to the number 6, relationships are huge for HR. And this is that in bridging that employer and employee relationship. So whether you're working in a unionized environment, non-unionized environment, I keep seeing this as a theme, but that focus on trust is a must. Being able to focus just on strength of relationships, right? So many employees have experienced issues at work. Maybe it's workplace harassment. Some people don't bother reporting it anymore, right? But that's due to a lack of trust, of confidence in the culture and the processes. Are they clear? Do they need to be revisited? So many industries with high-profile labor strikes, increased tensions over those return to work mandates, shifts in focus for DEI initiatives. Some of this is really just getting back to the basics and finding and building trust between employees, their managers, and the organization. So how can HR support? And this goes back to some of those human skills of relationship building. It can be encouraging more regular check-ins, empowering people to provide feedback. Whatever they may be, communications plays a huge role here too, but anything that's focused on building and retaining relationships. So hopefully you're seeing lots of opportunity. There's lots of work for our HR professionals in the workplace. And of course, I would be remiss, not to recognize that the pace and the volume of change hitting HR departments isn't, I would say it's astronomical. I mean, just from my own career perspective, we could have another webinar just to talk about the implications to how HR departments are structured and resourced. But there is a lot of additional work and opportunity. I definitely felt it myself, felt it with my, dear friends and colleagues that work in human resources, but really feeling the pressure as well. So it's important to be able to step back, prioritize your own professional growth as well. I really like this graphic from the Academy to Innovate HR. It's an academy actually headquartered in the Netherlands, but it's just a great summary of the core skills that all HR professionals need. Right? That business acumen, do you understand? Can you translate your organization's mission and goals and context into strategy? Are you able to read, apply, and communicate data in a way that will influence decision-making with data literacy? Do you have that digital agility to use technology to increase your impact? There's so many tools out there. People advocacy, right? This is the ability to build a strong culture, get the best out of people, right? Be a champion, be a communications expert. And then execution excellence. So that ability, like today, being able to understand these external trends, what do they mean to you? What do your customers need? What do your employees need? And how do you round that out to build strategies for your own organization? So as an HR professional, you wear many different hats, right? So in addition to these broad skills, being able to develop at least one competency within a specialized area like talent or learning, operations is really important, as well as leadership, right? So whether you're formally managing someone or not, or a group of people, HR is always in a position of influence. And that's really what leadership is all about. So developing those leadership skills is also key to your success as an HR professional. So I hope that you take some time to focus on your own development. It's probably a good sign if you're here today and curious. I hope that you remain curious about the field, continue to develop your own skills, and think about the impact of all of these opportunities and challenges to your own work. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Monica, to provide an overview of what continuing education can offer for your development as an HR professional.
Wow, thank you, Christine. I've been making notes all throughout that presentation. That was absolutely phenomenal. And I really appreciate you taking the time to spend your time with us and impart your knowledge with us, but also to get us thinking. And the key takeaway for me with that relationship building, but also is really to recognize one another and communicate that. And I think that employee recognition is key as well. And when I'm looking at that sort of the talent marketplace, but also the benefits of what that does with with an individual when they are recognized for that work, especially when things have been quite trying and or things have shifted and changed within either your role or within your workplace. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So yes, again, thank you, Christine, for that very insightful session. We're going to switch gears a bit. And before we jump into the question and answer portion of the webinar, I'd just like to take a few minutes quickly to walk everyone through the online human resources management program that we offer here at McMaster Continuing Education. This program is 100% online and provides a comprehensive overview of human resources management and is ideal for not only those already working in the field and looking to upskill, but also those who are hoping to break into the field of human resources. Our human resources management program is a great opportunity for those working towards their CHRP and CHRL designations, as many courses are approved by the Human Resources Professional Association, which is the HRPA. There are 2 learning streams that we offer here at McMaster Continuing Education. And before I dive into that, I'm just going to read these bullets really quickly, and then I will talk to you about the 2 different opportunities that you can sign up for if they are of relevance to you. But what you'll learn with the Human Resources Management Program is an awareness of the HR ethical principles, how to recognize appropriate organizational, legal, and professional policies, the connection of strategic human resources management practices to organizational structure and culture, collecting, using, and analyzing human resources information and data, tools and techniques to plan for talent pipeline, recruiting, and hiring, which Christine so kindly touched upon within her webinar today. Next slide. And here are our 2 different streams. So you can earn a certificate of professional learning with just 3 courses, or you can pursue the diploma path by completing 5 core courses and 4 elective courses. The diploma path is highly recommended for those who are looking to get into HR or are pursuing their CHRP or CHRL designation. And so you'll see the 2 streams, the Certificate of Professional Learning, and again, all the courses are an online format. You can choose between Foundations in Management, Foundations in Talent Planning and Acquisition, Foundations in Workplace Health and Safety, and then you'll see the Human Resources Management Diploma and what's required for that. It was a pleasure spending this hour with you and Christine. I certainly learned a lot and I have a lot of takeaways, and I hope that you do as well. And I hope to see you either in a class or in another upcoming webinar. So we will be working on the 2025 schedule shortly. So thanks, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Yes,
Thanks,
hope to see you in a
Christine.
course soon. Thanks,
Yes.
Monica.
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.